A corrupt city inspector humiliates and destroys the merchandise of Sister Lucia, a street vendor, believing she has no one to defend her. He didn't expect the woman confronting his arrogance to be an uncompromising public prosecutor, ready to show him who truly holds power. The woman, wearing a discreet blazer and tailored trousers, stepped forward, her voice calm but imbued with an innate authority that the inspector, Mr. Almeida, seemed incapable of recognizing. He, a corpulent man with a reddish face and a cynical smirk, was more concerned with flaunting his power than observing details. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice a little firmer now. "The lady is just selling her goods. There's no need for such aggression, nor to destroy her livelihood." Almeida let out a short, disdainful laugh, tossing the remains of a smashed cake onto the ground. "Well, well. Has the lawyer for the poor arrived, or the protector of offenders? Listen here, young lady, I am the inspector for this area, and this lady is acting illegally. No license, no hygiene, occupying public space. And if you don't step aside, you'll end up in trouble too." He pointed a fat finger at her, the veiled threat in his eyes. "Don't meddle where you're not called." Sister Lucia, her face marked by humiliation and tears streaming down, tried to intervene, her voice choked. "Please, miss, don't get involved. Shut up, old woman," Almeida snarled at the sister before turning his gaze back to the woman. "See? She knows her place. Now you, with that know-it-all attitude, had better follow her example. Or do you want me to call the police on you for obstruction of official duties?" He puffed out his chest, certain of his victory. The public prosecutor, whose name was Helena, felt a wave of cold fury rise up her spine. The man's arrogance was palpable, his disregard for the law and the dignity of others revolting. Her eyes, previously merely observant, now gleamed with dangerous intensity. "Call the police, sir," Helena repeated, an icy smile playing on her lips. "That's an excellent idea, but perhaps not for me." She took an ID holder from her blazer, opening it with a precise movement to reveal a badge and professional identification. The sunlight reflected on the metal, and Almeida's face suddenly paled. "Public Prosecutor Helena Vasconcelos," she declared, her voice now sharp as a blade. "From the Public Prosecutor's office, and contrary to what you think, I am exactly where I need to be." Almeida's cynical smirk crumbled, his bulging eyes fixed on the identification, and sweat began to bead on his forehead. The color drained from his face, replaced by a grayish hue of shock and terror. He swallowed hard, trying to formulate a sentence, but the words seemed stuck in his throat. "You, sir," Helena continued without averting her gaze, "have just committed a series of serious offenses: abuse of authority, destruction of private property, harassment and threatening a law-abiding citizen, and, to top it off, you attempted to intimidate a public prosecutor in the exercise of her duties." She snapped the ID holder shut with a dry click, the sound echoing in the tense silence. I didn't know, Your Honor," Almeida stammered, his hands trembling. "I swear I didn't know. I was just doing my job." "Your job, Mr. Almeida," Helena retorted, her voice low but charged with an implacable force, "does not include humiliating and destroying. Your job is to inspect, not to tyrannize. And from what I have just witnessed, you lack the slightest moral or ethical qualification to exercise any type of public authority." She pulled her cell phone from her pocket, dialing a number quickly. "I'm on Rua das Flores, in front of the Ponquente Bakery," she said into the phone, without taking her eyes off Almeida. "I need a police patrol car and a team from City Hall's Internal Affairs Department immediately. I have an inspector, Mr. Almeida, whose license has just been revoked by me, Public Prosecutor Helena Vasconcelos, for abuse of authority and improper conduct. He is in custody and will be detained on the spot." Almeida staggered backward, his face now completely white. "No, please, Your Honor. I have a family. I'll lose my job. I beg you." The tone of his voice shifted from arrogance to desperation in a matter of seconds. Helena ignored him, hanging up the phone. "Your license as an inspector is officially revoked, Mr. Almeida, and you will be arrested here and now. Justice does not tolerate corruption and cruelty, especially from those who should uphold order." Sister Lucia, who had been watching the scene in shock, brought her hands to her mouth, her eyes wide. The man who had humiliated her and destroyed her merchandise was now crumbling before the unquestionable authority of that woman. The public prosecutor, relentless and serene, had shown who truly held the power. Almeida's despair was a pathetic spectacle. The man who minutes before had displayed repulsive arrogance now cowered, pleading, "Please, Your Honor, think of my wife, my children. They depend on me. I made a mistake, I know, but I can fix it. I can return the money. I can help Sister Lucia set up her stall again." Helena observed him with calculated coldness. The public prosecutor's mask was impenetrable. "Your family, Mr. Almeida, should have been your primary reason to act with integrity, not to justify your corruption. You are not in a position to negotiate. The consequences of your actions are inevitable." Sister Lucia, still in shock, watched the scene with tear-filled eyes. The humiliation she had felt earlier began to give way to a sense of justice, albeit bittersweet. The smashed cakes on the ground were a vivid reminder of that man's cruelty, and seeing him collapse was, in a way, a balm for her wounded soul. The distant sound of a siren began to be heard, growing rapidly. Almeida trembled, his wide eyes fixed in the direction from which the sound came. He tried to take a step back, as if he could disappear into the crowd that was beginning to gather, drawn by the unusual drama. "Don't try to flee, Mr. Almeida," Helena warned, her voice low but charged with an authority that brooked no questioning. "That will only worsen your situation." The siren ceased abruptly a few meters away, and a police patrol car stopped on the sidewalk. Almost simultaneously, an unmarked car, but with the discreet identification of City Hall's Internal Affairs Department, parked right behind. Two uniformed police officers and a man in a suit, with a briefcase in hand, exited the vehicles. Helena gestured with her head to the newcomers. "Here, gentlemen, Public Prosecutor Helena Vasconcelos." The police officers, recognizing the prosecutor's authority, approached respectfully. The man from Internal Affairs, a middle-aged individual with a serious expression, also introduced himself. "Inspector Carlos Mendez from Internal Affairs. How can we help, prosecutor?" "Inspector officers," Helena began, her voice clear and concise. "This is Mr. Almeida, a city inspector. I have just witnessed and documented a series of serious offenses committed by him: abuse of authority, harassment, destruction of private property, and threatening a law-abiding citizen, Sister Lucia." She pointed to the vendor, who was still visibly shaken. "Furthermore, he attempted to intimidate a public prosecutor in the exercise of her duties." The eyes of the police officers and Inspector Mendez turned to Almeida, who now looked like a deflated sack of potatoes. Inspector Mendez, with a look of disapproval, opened his briefcase and began taking notes. "Mr. Almeida," Helena continued, addressing the inspector directly, "your license has been revoked, and as I informed you, you are in custody and will be detained on the spot." The officers approached Almeida. "Mr. Almeida, you are under arrest for abuse of authority and the other charges made by the prosecutor. Please extend your hands." Almeida, in a final desperate act of denial, tried to back away. "No, I didn't do anything. It was a misunderstanding. I am a law-abiding citizen." One of the officers, with a swift and professional movement, grabbed Almeida's arm. "Don't make it difficult, sir. Cooperate." The other officer was already pulling out handcuffs. The metallic click echoed, sealing the inspector's fate. The scene was shocking for the few passers-by who stopped to watch. The corpulent man, once so imposing and threatening, was now just a handcuffed individual, his face red with shame and suppressed fury, being led away by the police. Sister Lucia let out a trembling sigh, tears streaming freely, but now they were tears of relief. She watched Almeida being placed in the patrol car, Inspector Mendez exchanging a few words with Helena before heading to his own car. Helena, finally, turned to Sister Lucia, her expression softening slightly. "Are you all right, sister?" Sister Lucia nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Yes, prosecutor, I don't know how to thank you. He humiliated me so much. I thought there was no hope." Helena offered a small smile, a glimpse of humanity behind the facade of the relentless prosecutor. "Justice always finds its way, Sister Lucia. Sometimes it just needs a little push." She looked at the smashed cakes on the ground. "We'll resolve that too. Don't worry." Sister Lucia, her face still marked by tears, but now with a glimmer of hope in her eyes, looked at Helena. "Don't worry. But my cakes. That was all I had for today, and the money I was going to make. It was for the nursing home." Her voice was still choked, but the despair she felt earlier had lessened. Helena nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I understand, sister, and I assure you that Mr. Almeida will be held accountable for this as well. But for now, I don't want you to leave here empty-handed." She took out her personal wallet, not her identification, and pulled out some notes. "Please accept this. It's to cover today's losses and a little more, so you can restock tomorrow. Consider it an advance from justice." Sister Lucia's eyes widened, hesitant. "Oh no, prosecutor, I can't accept. You've already done so much for me." "You can, and you should, sister," Helena insisted, placing the money in her hands. "It's the least I can do. And it's not charity, it's restitution. Mr. Almeida will have to bear the consequences of his actions. And that includes compensation. But you can't wait. Justice sometimes is a little slow, but it is not blind." At that moment, Inspector Mendez, who had finished speaking with the police officers and noting the initial details, approached again. "Prosecutor Vasconcelos, Mr. Almeida has been taken to the police station. We will initiate the internal disciplinary process immediately, and the criminal charges will proceed. I immensely appreciate your intervention. It's rare to have a public prosecutor in the field to witness and act with such promptness." Helena nodded. "It's my duty, Inspector. And unfortunately, cases like Mr. Almeida's are not as rare as we would like. I ask that internal affairs be rigorous. We need inspectors who serve the population, not oppress them." "Rest assured, prosecutor," Mendez guaranteed, his expression serious, "we do not tolerate this type of conduct. He will be thoroughly investigated, and if there are other cases of abuse, they will come to light. I will keep you informed of the process's progress." "Thank you, Inspector," Helena replied. She then turned to Sister Lucia, who held the money with trembling hands, her eyes moist with gratitude. "Prosecutor Helena," the sister began, her voice choked with emotion, "you are an angel. I prayed so much for a miracle, and it came in the form of a strong and just woman. May God bless you and protect you in your mission." She made the sign of the cross, a simple gesture, but laden with profound faith and recognition. Helena felt a warmth in her chest, a rare moment of personal satisfaction amidst the coldness of the law. "You deserve it, Sister Lucia. No one should be treated the way you were. Continue your work with your faith. People like you are the true strength of this city." She looked at the smashed cakes on the ground once more. "And tomorrow, I hope you'll be back here with even more delicious cakes." Sister Lucia managed a genuine smile, the first since the beginning of that nightmare. "I will be, prosecutor. By the grace of God and your help, I will be." Helena gave a final nod to Inspector Mendez and Sister Lucia before walking away. As she walked, The murmur of the dispersing crowd seemed less chaotic. The morning sun, which had previously seemed indifferent to injustice, now bathed the street with a light that felt more promising. She thought of Mr. Almeida, of his pathetic despair, the crumbled arrogance, the empty plea. It was an image that repeated itself in her career, that of powerful individuals who, confronted with the true authority of the law, revealed themselves to be small and cowardly. But this time, the satisfaction was deeper. It wasn't just a case. It was the defense of a vulnerable person, the restoration of dignity for someone who was being trampled. The incident, though quick and unexpected, reinforced her conviction. Justice was not just an abstract concept in courtrooms. It needed to be lived, practiced in the streets, in small gestures, in the defense of those who have no voice. Sometimes, being a public prosecutor meant more than lawsuits and hearings. It meant being present, observing, and acting when human dignity was attacked. Helena took out her cell phone again, not to call, but to check the time. She had an important meeting soon and needed to recompose herself. The public prosecutor, off duty, had fulfilled her role. Now it was time to return to her routine, but with the certainty that on that day she had made a difference. The bitter taste of injustice had been replaced by the sweet taste of a duty fulfilled, and the image of Sister Lucia with a renewed smile would be a reminder that, even on the busiest streets, hope and justice could flourish. Helena continued her walk, the sound of cars and the city's buzz returning to fill the space that had previously been dominated by the siren and the authoritative voice. She felt the weight of the ID holder in her pocket, not just the physical weight, but the symbolic. That piece of leather with her identification was not just a document, it was an oath, a responsibility that transcended office hours and courthouse walls. Even off-duty, she was Helena Vasconcelos, public prosecutor, and that identity, she realized, was inseparable from who she was. The adrenaline began to subside, giving way to a feeling of tiredness, but also of renewed purpose. The smell of coffee and fresh bread from a nearby bakery reminded her that she hadn't had breakfast. But physical hunger was insignificant compared to the satisfaction of having done what was right. The clock showed 9:45 a.m., enough time to get to the office, review the last details, and shift her focus. The transition from a chaotic street to the formality of a meeting room was a leap she made daily, but today the mental landscape was different. As she walked toward her car, parked a few blocks away, she allowed herself a brief moment of reflection on Sister Lucia. The image of the nun's hesitant smile, mixed with tears of relief, was etched in her mind. Helena knew that the money she had given was only an immediate palliative. The process against Almeida would be long, and full restitution would take time. But Sister Lucia was not alone. Helena would ensure that the case was closely monitored, that the nun received all necessary support. It was a silent commitment she made, an addition to her mental to-do list. She reached her car, a discreet sedan that didn't draw attention. She opened the door, sat down, and closed her eyes for an instant. She took a deep breath, feeling the fresh morning air fill her lungs. The smell of smashed cakes and Almeida's fury still lingered in her olfactory and visual memory, but they were dissipating, giving way to clarity. She started the car, the engine purring softly. As she drove through the busy streets, the city seemed to have regained its normal rhythm, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded minutes earlier. But Helena was not oblivious. She carried with her the proof that justice, at times, was a silent and unexpected force, capable of emerging in the most improbable moments and in the most common places. And for Helena, that was what truly mattered. She was the guardian of that hope, the voice of those who could not cry out, and today she had been that voice. The clock showed 9:45 a.m. Upon parking in the basement of the public prosecutor's office building, The atmosphere changed. The cold air conditioning, the almost reverent silence of the corridors, the distant sound of keyboards and telephones. It was a world of papers, codes, and precedents, so different from the noisy and unpredictable street. Helena greeted the security guard at the entrance with a nod, her expression already assuming the usual seriousness of her work environment. On her floor, her secretary, Donna Clara, awaited her with a pile of documents and an expression that indicated she had much to report. Donna Clara, with her impeccably pinned grey hair and glasses perched on her nose, was the guardian of time and order in Helena's office. "Good morning, Prosecutor Helena. The meeting with Dr. Ribeiro has been moved up to 10:30, and Dr. Castro called, wanting to discuss the Operation Clean Hands case. He said it's urgent." Helena nodded, taking the papers from her secretary's hand. "Thank you, Clara. I need to review some things and make a quick call. Oh, and Clara, please contact the 12th Police Precinct. I want to know the progress of Inspector Almeida's case. Make sure the process is initiated immediately and that Sister Lucia is contacted to give her statement, with all necessary support." Donna Clara, already accustomed to Helena's ability to handle multiple fronts, simply noted it down, without asking questions about the sudden urgency regarding a city inspector. "Right, Prosecutor Helena. I'll do that right away." Helena entered her office, an organized and functional space with shelves full of law books and folders stacked with military precision. She opened the window, allowing a bit of the morning sun to enter, illuminating the dust suspended in the air and contrasting with the cold light of the fluorescent lamps. The incident on the street was still fresh in her mind. The image of the smashed cakes and Sister Lucia's despair, Almeida's arrogance, and his subsequent humiliation. It was a powerful memory, but now it needed to be channeled, transformed into motivation for the battles that awaited her there within those walls. She knew that Almeida's case, although personally gratifying, would be just one more in the vast machinery of justice. Her team would handle the details, ensuring that the corrupt man faced the consequences. Her main role now was different. She sat down, turned on her computer, and began to leaf through the documents for the meeting with Dr. Ribeiro. It was a complex case of misappropriation of public funds involving influential figures. Operation Clean Hands, mentioned by Dr. Castro, was even more delicate, with political ramifications that required impeccable caution and strategy. Helena took a deep breath, the smell of paper and coffee mixing with the breeze coming through the window. This was her daily battlefield. The laws, the codes, the testimonies, these were her weapons. And she was ready. The street had given her a visceral reminder of why she did what she did. Justice was not a theory. It was a practice, a continuous act of vigilance and intervention. And she, Helena Vasconcelos, was the guardian of that hope, the voice of those who could not cry out. And today, she had been that voice, both on the streets and now in the corridors of the law. The fresh air, still carrying the distant scent of warm asphalt and, in her olfactory memory, the sweet aroma of Sister Lucia's cakes, was a persistent reminder of what had just happened. She didn't sit down immediately. She walked to the window, observing the city below. The cars, the hurried people, life going on its course, oblivious to the small revolution she had orchestrated on a busy corner. The image of Sister Lucia's smile, still trembling with relief and gratitude, was a balm for the soul, but Almeida's fury, the scorn in his eyes before reality hit him, still disturbed her. Not because of the anger she felt, but because of the ease with which human dignity could be crushed by petty, corrupt power. 15 minutes, she murmured to herself, looking at the wall clock. Enough time to readjust her internal compass. Almeida's case was an anomaly in her routine, a personal intervention that had turned into an official act. Now, she needed to ensure that the system, The very system Almeida had tried to subvert worked to correct the injustice. The call to the 12th precinct was crucial, not just for Almeida, but for Sister Lucia. Psychological and legal support would be essential so that the nun would not feel vulnerable again. Helena picked up the internal phone. "Clara, please connect me with Dr. Ricardo at the 12th precinct, and if he's not available, with the duty officer." A few seconds later, Dr. Ricardo's grave voice filled the phone. "Prosecutor Helena, good morning. To what do I owe the honor?" "Good morning? Ricardo, I need a favor. I just left a certain city inspector, a Mr. Almeida, with your team. He was detained for abuse of authority, corruption, and assault against a street vendor. I want you to ensure that the case is handled with the utmost priority and that the victim, Sister Lucia, receives all necessary support for her statement and case follow-up." There was a brief pause. "Almeida, the South Zone inspector? He's known for being problematic, but detained by you, off-duty." The surprise was palpable in Ricardo's voice. Helena allowed herself a small smile. "Let's just say he had an unexpected encounter with the law. The point is, I don't want this to get lost in bureaucracy. I want him to feel the weight of the law, and for Sister Lucia to feel that justice exists." "Understood, Prosecutor Helena. Consider it done. I'll personally supervise. And Sister Lucia will have all the support. You can rest assured." "Thank you, Ricardo. I'm counting on you." Upon hanging up, Helena felt a subtle relief, a loose end tied. Now, it was time to dive into the whirlwind of papers and cases that awaited her. She sat at her desk, turned on her computer, and opened the Operation Clean Hands case folder. The headlines about that case were daily, and the pressure on the public prosecutor's office was immense. It involved high-ranking politicians and powerful businessmen, a complex web of corruption that threatened to destabilize the municipal administration. The meeting with Dr. Ribeiro about the misappropriation of public funds was the next challenge. The numbers, the reports, the evidence, everything needed to be meticulously analyzed. The transition from direct, visceral intervention on the street to the cold logic of documents was abrupt, but Helena was accustomed to it. It was the duality of her profession, the passion for justice and the discipline of the law. She leafed through the documents, her mind already adapting to the new details, names and dates. The incident on the street had been a vivid reminder of why she did what she did, an injection of purpose that now fueled her concentration. Justice was not just for the big cases, for the media spotlight. It was for Sister Lucia, for the smashed cakes, for trampled dignity. And the fight for it was continuous on all fronts, and she was ready. Helena Vasconcelos, the guardian of that hope, the voice of those who could not cry out, was ready to continue her mission, both on the streets and now in the corridors of the law. Helena hung up the phone, the dry click echoing in the silence of the office. An almost imperceptible sigh escaped her lips. The loose end concerning Almeida and Sister Lucia was, for now, tied. The feeling of duty fulfilled, of having acted immediately and effectively, was a gentle warmth spreading in her chest, contrasting with the cold air conditioning of the environment. But there was no time to savor the victory. The pile of documents on her desk was a stark reminder of the other battles that awaited her. She moved away from the window where the city continued its frantic pace and sat at her polished mahogany desk. The computer monitor flickered, displaying the login screen. With a swift movement, she typed her password, and the familiar interface of her work system appeared. The Operation Clean Hands folder was highlighted, with an alert icon blinking. "Doctor, Castro was not joking when he said it was urgent. Helena opened the file, and a torrent of data, financial reports, and transcripts of phone interceptions filled the screen. Names of well-known politicians, influential businessmen, astronomical figures of misappropriation. It was a labyrinth of corruption, much more intricate and dangerous than the arrogance of a street inspector. Here, the weapons were not the authority of a badge, but legal astuteness, investigative patience, and the courage to confront powers that considered themselves untouchable. She began to read, her mind adjusting to the complexity of the facts. Each paragraph, each line of a bank statement was a thread to be pulled, a piece of a giant puzzle. The adrenaline of the confrontation on the street now transformed into a sharp, almost surgical concentration. The image of Sister Lucia's smashed cakes, for an instant, superimposed itself on the flow of money charts, reinforcing the purpose of her work. Injustice had no size. It manifested itself both in small daily humiliations and in large schemes that bled public coffers dry. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her immersion. It was Donna Clara with a steaming cup of coffee and a new folder in hand. Prosecutor Helena, Dr. Ribeiro is on his way, and he brought the supplementary reports you requested on the misappropriation of funds case. The coffee is fresh. Helena smiled, grateful. Thank you, Clara. Perfect. You can leave them here. And please, prepare the meeting room. Donna Clara nodded, placing the folder and coffee next to the keyboard. Right. Oh, and Dr. Castro called again. He said he needs an update on clean hands before lunch. Understood. Tell him I'm reviewing and will call as soon as I finish with Dr. Ribeiro. As Clara left, Helena picked up the coffee cup, the strong, bitter aroma filling the air. She opened the new folder. It was the public funds misappropriation case, the subject of the imminent meeting. Here were the technical details, the accounting minutiae, the evidence that needed to be presented irrefutably. She had less than half an hour to absorb everything, to formulate her line of questioning and defense. Her eyes scanned the pages, absorbing information with the speed of someone who had done this for years. The public prosecutor, who moments before had been an indignant citizen on the streets, was now the guardian of the law, the relentless strategist, the voice of those who could not defend themselves against institutionalized corruption. The transition was complete. The warmth of the morning sun and the smell of Sister Lucia's cakes were still vivid memories, but now they were part of an internal fuel, a constant reminder of why she dedicated her life to this fight. Justice was not an abstract concept in books. It was a living force that needed to be nurtured and defended every day, on every corner, in every meeting room. And Helena Vasconcelos was ready for the next battle. She closed the misappropriation of funds folder, her mind already outlining the crucial points to be addressed. The clock was ticking, and duty called. Precisely at 9:30 a.m., the door opened, and Dr. Ribeiro entered, a middle-aged man with a brow furrowed with worry and a briefcase even bulkier than Helena's under his arm. He was one of the most experienced prosecutors on the team, but the weight of the public funds misappropriation case seemed to affect him more than usual. Good morning, Helena. Sorry for the delay. Traffic was impossible, Ribeiro said with a tired nod as he sat in the chair opposite Helena's desk. No problem, Dr. Ribeiro. The important thing is that we're here, Helena replied, her tone professional and direct. She indicated the folder she had just closed. I've analyzed the supplementary reports. There are some inconsistencies that concern me, especially in the balance sheets of Constructora Alpha and in the payments to the consulting firm Rapid Solutions. Ribeiro nodded, opening his own folder and leafing through the documents. Yes, I noticed that too. Rapid Solutions appears to be a front. There are no employee records, and the registered address is a post office box. We suspect it's a shell company used by strawmen to launder the embezzled money. Exactly, Helena agreed, her eyes fixed on the reports. But we need more than suspicions. We need irrefutable evidence. The bank statements we've obtained so far show transfers to offshore accounts, but we haven't been able to trace the ultimate beneficiaries. What new information do we have about lifting the banking secrecy of Constructora Alpha's directors? Ribeiro sighed. We're still awaiting the judicial decision. Their defense is using every tactic to delay the process. They claim violation of privacy, insufficient evidence. It's the same old story. Helena leaned slightly forward, her voice gaining a controlled intensity. Same old story, yes, but we cannot yield. Every day these funds remain misappropriated is one less day for hospitals, schools, basic infrastructure. It's the people's money being stolen. It's no different from that corrupt inspector who tries to extort a street vendor, just on a much larger scale. Ribeiro looked at her, surprised by the vehemence of her comparison. You're right, Helena. The essence is the same. Greed and abuse of power. We need to pressure the judge, prepare a new urgent request, highlighting the social impact of the misappropriation, and let's focus on witnesses. Is there any employee of Constructora Alpha who might have access to internal information, someone who is dissatisfied or has been harmed? Helena was already outlining the strategy, her mind working at high speed. We have a former accountant, Mr. Mendez. He was unfairly dismissed 6 months ago. He refused to sign some documents and was let go. He could be our key, Ribeiro revealed, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Perfect. Let's schedule a meeting with him as soon as possible. Ensure he has protection if necessary. And prepare a list of all public projects Constructora Alpha has been involved in over the last 5 years. We need a complete overview to identify other possible misappropriations, Helena instructed, her voice firm and decisive. The meeting with Ribeiro lasted over an hour, delving into the intricate details of the corruption. When he finally left, Helena felt the weight of responsibility, but also a renewed energy. The fight against injustice, whether in the form of a petty inspector or a billion-dollar scheme, was the same. She turned to her computer, the Operation Clean Hands folder still blinking. Dr. Castro awaited her return. The complexity of the cases was overwhelming, but the image of Sister Lucia, with her smashed cakes and grateful smile, was a constant reminder of the greater purpose. Justice was not a luxury, it was a necessity, a fundamental right. And Helena Vasconcelos was there to guarantee it in all its forms. With a final sip of coffee, she dialed Dr. Castro's number. The next battle awaited. She dialed Dr. Castro's number. The line rang only twice before it was answered. Castro! The grave, impatient voice echoed from the other end. Dr. Castro, it's Helena. I've just finished the meeting with Dr. Ribeiro and reviewed the Clean Hands folder as you requested. There was a brief pause, a loaded silence that Helena knew well. And so, Helena, what's your first impression? Be frank. It's a vast scheme, Dr. Castro, much more widespread than the initial report suggested. The tentacles reach spheres we didn't expect, and the figures are frightening. The names involved, some of them, are untouchable. Helena didn't soften her words. This was not the time for euphemisms. Untouchable, yes, but not for us, Castro retorted, his voice hardening. That's why we need you, Helena. Your insight, your courage. This operation is the largest the public prosecutor's office has coordinated this decade. We cannot fail. There are high-ranking politicians, judges, businessmen who believe themselves above any law. They are draining the country. I understand the gravity, Dr. Castro. My concern is the security of our sources and the shield these individuals have built. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, the web of influence. It's a labyrinth. A labyrinth you will unravel. You have the team, the resources, and the determination, I know. What do you need immediately? Helena took a deep breath, her mind already processing the information and formulating the next steps. I need unrestricted access to all intelligence reports, not just the financial ones. I want to see the phone interceptions in their entirety, the behavioral analyses, the psychological profiles of the main individuals involved, and I need a meeting with the Federal Police Investigation Team as soon as possible. I want to understand the chronology of events and the security failures that allowed this scheme to expand for so long. Done. I'll arrange access and schedule the meeting for tomorrow morning. Be ready for a long day. And Helena, one more thing. This case is extremely sensitive. Any leak, any misstep could jeopardize everything and our lives. Do you understand the scope? Understood, Dr. Castro. I am aware of the risks, but the scope of the injustice is greater than any personal risk, Helena replied, the image of Sister Lucia's smashed cakes flashing in her mind, a symbol of corruption at all its scales. The fight was the same. Only the battlefield and the weapons changed. That's the Helena I know. Keep me informed of every advance and every obstacle. Don't hesitate to call me any time. Will do, Dr. Castro, thank you. Helena hung up the phone, the silence of the office seeming even heavier. The adrenaline that had propelled her on the street when confronting Almeida now transformed into an electric current of concentration and purpose. Operation Clean Hands was not just a case. It was a war against the rot that corroded the foundations of society. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes fixed on the computer screen where the folder blinked, inviting and threatening. The complexity of the case was overwhelming, but Helena's determination was unshakable. Justice was not a luxury for a few, nor an abstract concept. It was a fundamental right, and she was there to guarantee it in all its forms. With a final sip of coffee, now cold, Helena reopened the Operation Clean Hands folder. There was much work to be done. The next battle had begun. The computer screen, once a portal for communication, was now a window into an abyss of information. The digital folder unfolded into subfolders. Financial reports, phone interceptions, protected testimonies, profiles of individuals involved, asset analysis. Helena started with the financial reports, the backbone of any corruption scheme. Spreadsheets stretched for hundreds of lines, detailing transfers between phantom companies, inflated payments for non-existent services, and acquisitions of luxury goods in the names of third parties. Her eyes scanned the numbers, her mind an implacable calculator, adding, subtracting, identifying patterns. Constructora Alpha was just the tip of the iceberg. There were other contractors, consulting firms, law offices, all interconnected by a complex web of cross-holdings and common directors. Rapid Solutions, mentioned by Ribeiro, was just one of dozens of shell companies, each with a specific role in money laundering and fund misappropriation. Helena felt a knot in her stomach. The figures were astronomical, equivalent to entire budgets of small cities, diverted into private pockets. Every cent represented an unpaved road, a hospital without beds, a school without teaching materials. The image of Sister Lucia's smashed cakes returned, but now amplified 1,000-fold. Almeida was a petty parasite. Those involved in Clean Hands were predators devouring their own country. She opened the Profiles of Individuals Involved subfolder. Well-known names, some with faces that graced magazine and newspaper covers, appeared on the screen. Influential politicians, businessmen with financial empires, even figures from the judiciary. The untouchables Castro had spoken of. Helena felt a shiver, not of fear, but of a cold, calculating fury. The shield they had built was impressive, but not impenetrable. There was always a crack, a loose end, a weak link. She picked up a notepad and a pen, starting to scribble. Chronology of events, cross-reference with political appointments. Cash flow, identify anomalies on dates of major tenders. Witnesses, review testimonies, look for inconsistencies, identify potential collaborators. Her mind was buzzing, transforming the chaotic mass of data into a battle map. The meeting with the federal police, scheduled for the next day, would be crucial. She needed to understand their perspective, the difficulties they faced, the clues that might have been underestimated. Collaboration between the public prosecutor's office and the federal police was key to dismantling a scheme of this magnitude. Helena leaned back in her chair, massaging her temples. The cold coffee no longer had an effect. Exhaustion began to weigh on her, but the urgency of the case prevented her from giving in. She knew that this operation would not just be a legal battle, but a war of nerves, a test of endurance against a powerful and unscrupulous enemy. Castro's veiled threat about the risks to life echoed in her mind, but it was muffled by the unshakable conviction that justice must prevail. She returned to the screen, focusing on the phone interceptions. Hundreds of hours of recordings, transcribed and analyzed. There, between the lines of coded conversations, in the strategic silences, in the carefully chosen words, would be the truth. Helena knew that patience and astuteness would be her greatest weapons. The night wore on, but for Helena, time seemed to have stopped. She was immersed in the labyrinth of corruption, a public prosecutor determined to find a way out, not just for herself, but for the society she swore to protect. Operation Clean Hands was more than a case. It was a calling, and Helena Vasconcelos was ready to answer it with all her strength. She closed the digital folder, not out of tiredness, but to take a brief breath before diving back in. The next day would be long, and the fight was just beginning. Helena clicked on the phone interception subfolder. An extensive list of audio files and transcripts opened, each representing hours of recorded conversations, most of them coded and full of euphemisms. She knew that there, between the lines, would be the true face of the scheme. She began to scroll through the screen, randomly selecting some transcripts to get an idea of the volume and style of communications. The first ones she read were like riddles. The garden project needs more fertilizer. This month's harvest was good, but the weather is changing. We need to re-record the score so the orchestra doesn't go out of tune. Helena felt a chill. The language was so elaborate, it bordered on the ridiculous, were it not for the gravity of what it represented. Those scores and gardens were inflated contracts, fraudulent bids, and misappropriation of public funds. She decided to listen to some excerpts. She put on her headphones, and the voices, distorted and sometimes muffled, filled the silence of the office. They were the voices of men and women who seemed to be discussing the weather or football, but whose words concealed millionaire transactions and illicit agreements. The coldness with which they treated public money, the naturalness with which they planned frauds, was revolting. In one of the recordings, Helena heard the voice of a renowned politician, known for his impassioned speeches on ethics and morality. He spoke with a businessman, discussing adjustments to a travel package to ensure everyone reaches their destination. The trip was undoubtedly a billion-real infrastructure bid. The irony and hypocrisy were nauseating. Helena paused, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. The image of Sister Lucia, with her smashed cakes, reappeared. Almeida, the inspector, was a small fish in an ocean of sharks. The corruption she was uncovering was systemic, entrenched in the highest spheres, eroding the trust and hope of millions. The anger she felt on the street, seeing the injustice against the sister, now transformed into an even fiercer determination. She returned to the interceptions, but this time with a sharper focus. She looked for names, for dates that could cross-reference with the financial reports. In a conversation between two directors of Constructora Alpha, one of them mentioned, with a tone of concern, a problem with the old accountant, Mendez. He's asking too many questions about the books. Helena stopped the recording. Mr. Mendez, Ribeiro's lead. There was the confirmation. The mention of Mendez was not isolated. In other transcripts, there were veiled references to someone who didn't want to cooperate or a weak link that needed to be contained. This reinforced the importance of Mendez's testimony and the need for his protection. Helena noted everything, cross-referencing the information with the spreadsheets and profiles. She was building a timeline, a map of connections that began to make sense of the chaos. The night wore on, and tiredness began to set in. But Helena couldn't stop. Each new discovery was a boost, a piece that fit into the puzzle. She realized that the network of influence was not limited to politicians and businessmen. There were mentions of friends in the court and contacts in the press who could silence any noise. The shield was real, and Castro's threat about the risks to life was not an exaggeration. The meeting with the federal police would be the next crucial step, and Helena needed to be prepared to present a clear and strategic picture. She leaned back, her eyes fixed on the dark screen, the silence of the office filled only by the distant hum of the sleeping city. The war against corruption was far from over, but Helena Vasconcelos felt that finally she had found the thread of the narrative. Helena's cell phone alarm rang at 6 in the morning, a jarring sound that pulled her from a light, fragmented sleep. The Operation Clean Hands folder still blinked on her computer screen, a silent reminder of the battle that awaited her. She had slept only a few hours, but the adrenaline from the previous night and the urgency of the case kept her alert. A quick shower and strong coffee were enough to shake off the torpor. As she dressed, she mentally reviewed the key points she would present to the federal police. The meeting was not just a formality, it was the consolidation of a combat front. Upon arriving at the federal police building, Helena felt the atmosphere of seriousness and purpose that permeated the place. She was led to an austere meeting room where Chief Ricardo Torres already awaited her, accompanied by 2 agents she recognized from previous operations. Torres was a middle-aged man with graying hair and a keen gaze, known for his integrity and obstinacy. "Prosecutor Vasconcelos, good morning. Thank you for coming so early," Torres greeted, extending his hand. "We received Dr. Castro's summary. It seems you've made remarkable progress in record time." "Good morning, Chief. The pleasure is mine." "The urgency of the case demands it," Helena replied, sitting at the table. "My team and I have delved deep into the data the public prosecutor's office already possessed and what we managed to uncover. The situation is more serious than we imagined." Helena projected her laptop screen, displaying a complex flowchart she had assembled overnight. Constructora Alpha, as we already know, is the epicenter, but the network extends through dozens of shell companies, like Rapid Solutions, and involves high-ranking figures in various sectors. She pointed to the names that appeared on the screen, some of them publicly known. Politicians, businessmen, and, unfortunately, indications of involvement in other spheres of power. Torres's eyes narrowed. "The untouchables, as we usually call them. We've tried to approach them on other occasions, but their shielding is almost perfect. There's always a legal maneuver, a leak of information that prevents us from moving forward." "I understand perfectly, but I believe we've found a crack," Helena continued, focusing on a specific part of the flowchart. "In the phone interceptions, there are recurring mentions of an old accountant, a Mr. Mendez, who was asking too many questions about the books. This aligns with a lead we obtained from a protected source." The agents exchanged glances. "Mendez," one of them murmured. "I remember a name like that in an old report, but he disappeared from the radar. We thought he had retired or moved away." "He didn't disappear. He was silenced, or at least they tried," Helena corrected, her voice firm. "The conversations indicate he was removed, perhaps threatened, but the important thing is that he has crucial information. He is the weak link that can dismantle this structure." Torres tapped his fingers on the table. If he has information, he's also a target. We need to locate him and ensure his safety before anything else. It's an enormous risk. I agree. My proposal is for the federal police, with your expertise in witness protection, to lead the search and rescue of Mr. Mendez. Meanwhile, the public prosecutor's office will continue to compile the evidence, preparing search and seizure warrants and preventive arrests. We need to act quickly and with full coordination. It's an aggressive strategy, Prosecutor, Torres said with a slight smile. But it's the only one I see with a chance of success against these sharks. You have a clear vision. Justice cannot wait, Chief. Every day that passes, more public resources are diverted, more the public's trust is eroded, Helena replied, the image of Sister Lucia's cakes still vivid in her mind. We are talking about a scheme that bleeds the country dry. We cannot fail. The meeting extended for several more hours, detailing action plans, resource allocation, and the creation of a joint task force. The synergy between the public prosecutor's office and the federal police was palpable. The determination of both sides to dismantle Operation Clean Hands was unshakable. As she left the federal police building, Helena felt the weight of responsibility, but also a wave of cautious optimism. The first strategic battle had been won. Now, the hunt for Mr. Mendez would begin, and with it, the most dangerous phase of the operation. The war was far from over, but Helena Vasconcelos felt that finally, she had found the key to unraveling the scheme. The sun was already high, and the city buzzed, oblivious to the complex web of corruption that Helena and her team were about to expose. The days that followed were a race against time. The joint task force, named Operation Clean Hands, mobilized resources and intelligence. The federal police, with its network of informants and tracking capabilities, plunged into the search for Mendez. Helena, in turn, coordinated the public prosecutor's office team, which worked tirelessly to consolidate existing evidence and prepare the necessary warrants. The tension was palpable. Every call, every email was meticulously analyzed. Helena's team felt the pressure, knowing they were dealing with powerful figures. Intelligence reports indicated an increase in the target's movements, with lawyers being activated and assets being transferred. The shielding Torres had mentioned was beginning to manifest. On a rainy afternoon, Helena received a call from Chief Torres. Prosecutor, we have a probable location for Mendez. A small farm in the interior of Minas Gerais. He's isolated, and it seems he was forced into it. Our agents are on their way. Helena felt a shiver. Forced. Is he safe? That's what we're going to find out. We believe he's under some kind of surveillance, but not armed. More like a forced exile to keep him quiet. Our men are acting with maximum discretion. Hours later, confirmation arrived. Mendez was found, debilitated and frightened, but alive. He was being held in precarious conditions, with limited access to the outside world, under the supervision of henchmen posing as caregivers. The federal police team rescued him without incident, ensuring his safety in a protected location. The next day, Helena and Torres met with Mendez. The accountant, a middle-aged man with a face marked by worry and isolation, looked like a shadow of his former self. He hesitated at first, visibly terrified by the consequences of speaking. Mr. Mendez, we know you fear for your life, and we assure you we will do everything to protect you, Helena began, her voice soft but firm. But the truth is the only thing that can free us from this web of corruption. Your cooperation is crucial to dismantling this scheme. Mendez took a deep breath, his eyes moist. They threatened me. They said they would go after my family if I opened my mouth. I saw things, Prosecutor. Horrible things. Misappropriation of money from hospitals, schools, all under the guise of gardens and scores. He began to speak, and the words poured out. Mendez detailed the money laundering schemes, the secret offshore accounts, the names of the politicians and businessmen involved, the dates and values of the inflated contracts. He confirmed the interceptions, explaining the code behind each euphemism. The harvest was the bribe, the weather was the political pressure, the orchestra was the group of corrupt individuals. With each revelation, Helena felt her anger and determination intensify. Mendez was the missing piece, the link that connected all the loose ends. His memory was prodigious, and he had kept hidden documents and notes, which he now handed over to the team. With Mendez's testimony and the compiled evidence, Operation Clean Hands was ready to be launched. The team worked day and night, preparing search and seizure warrants, preventive arrests, and indictments. In the early hours of a Tuesday, the operation was launched. Hundreds of federal police agents, accompanied by public prosecutors, raided offices, luxury residences, and company headquarters in several cities. The shock was widespread. Renowned politicians, powerful businessmen, and directors of state-owned companies were awakened by the presence of the law at their doors. News images showed federal police cars, agents in bulletproof vests, and the astonished faces of those involved. The entire country watched, incredulous, as the web of corruption was exposed. Helena followed everything closely from the federal police operations room. Every arrest, every seizure of documents and money was a victory. The satisfaction was immense, but so was the awareness of the ongoing battle. At the end of the day, with the first results consolidated, Helena allowed herself a moment of reflection. The image of Sister Lucia, with her smashed cakes, came to mind. That small act of injustice on the street had been the trigger to uncover a scheme that was bleeding the country of billions. Almeida, the corrupt inspector, had already been tried and convicted. But the true victory was the dismantling of the sharks. The fight for justice was a long and arduous path, but Helena Vasconcelos had proven that the determination of a single person could make a difference. Operation Clean Hands was just the beginning, a reminder that corruption could be fought one step at a time, with courage and integrity. The city now breathed a slightly cleaner air, and Helena, exhausted but with a peaceful heart, knew she had done her part.